I was just saying that in Rose in Bloom, Mac reads Goethe, but I realized he doesn't read Goethe, he actually reads Henry David Thoreau. In Little Woman, there's a moment in part one where John translates a poem from Schiller to Meg.
Yes, that is very cute, and it's also very funny because John also knows German, and it's also funny if you think about it. It's kind of like the whole March family is very interested in German culture. Like maybe you don't see much with the others as much as you see with Joe, but I think Meg was also very eager to hear the translation of it, and John was also like, "Yeah, I'll help you translate it, or I can teach you with German." I think he said that. I'm not sure, but I think he said that, and it was also very sweet.
Yes, I have forgotten about that. I love it. It kind of goes along with my theory that Louisa May Alcott planned Jo's marriage maybe years before she wrote Little Woman, because it does feel like a natural thing to do, to introduce a German character to this family that is really obsessed about everything that comes from Germany.
I have to say, the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear like people saying Louisa was on a shovel because Louisa was forced to marry Joe off is, well, but why, if she was forced, why in the world would Louisa May Alcott write so many things about Joe's and the wife's love for Germany?
I think we can all agree that this really comes from that the quote that she wrote in her journal was about reuniting with her loved one in the afterlife. So Little Woman is a wish fulfillment.
Yes, that's true. And I also have to say, when like people read it, I think it's also kind of racist of them to state that he was shoveled into the novel, because I mean they know Friedrich is German, and it's almost always he's like they dislike him, especially because he is German. Like even people today are like, meh, she should have stayed single or with Laurie, which, to be honest, I can't stand both of it. I could never stand the thought that Joe might have ended with Laurie or alone, especially after reading the chapters All Alone and Surprises, because in these two chapters you can see how lonely Joe is, and then there are people who say she only married Friedrich because Friedrich was invented because Louisa May Alcott was forced to marry him.
I think you're correct about the racism, because I have read so many Louisa May Alcott studies that are like, Joe should have married Laurie or Joe should have been alone. There usually is a racist undertone when they start to speak about Friedrich's character, and then they do not include this part in Little Woman where Joe clearly loves everything that comes from Germany, or Louisa May Alcott's adoration to Germany. In Rose in Bloom, there is a Chinese character called Fan Si, and he marries an American girl.
Yes, and I also think it's funny that in Rose in Bloom, I think married, it is also very important because it shows that, well, okay, he was kind of mocked a bit, Francie, in the first book. I think it is also very important because, like, she didn't just completely leave them off in the second book. She included them, Francie, and she made him marry an American because it shows how inclusive she is. And while I know that many people are like, well, yes, but Louisa May Alcott has something against the Irish, while I can read a bit of it in her novels, we don't know what happened to her that made her hate the Irish people so much, and whether it's true at all.
I think it was a comment at the time to mock the Irish people, unfortunately. I spoke with someone who was working the Orchard House, and they said that it was really more about the effect of the time period. I don't know. Yeah, Irish people don't really get a good reputation in Little Woman because when Amy's limes are thrown to the snow, they are the Irish girls who are picking on her. We don't know.
But it's also kind of funny because Hannah herself is Irish, and Hannah is portrayed in a good light. So I agree with you. I think it is more like the effects of the time, because I mean, if Louisa May Alcott included a Chinese and Asian character in one of her novels, had this person marry an American, and it was portrayed as a good thing, then why should she be completely against the Irish if, like, Hannah was portrayed in such a good light?
I think it's a bit the same, like, now there's war going on in Ukraine, and Finnish here are boycotting Russian products. But I don't think all Finnish hate Russians because of that. Because it's not all Russians who are there or who are the cause of the situation, but it's certain individuals. I think we are onto something here. And the Marches themselves are Irish descendants, so I think it's a lot more complex. I think it's the same with the Italians, because on one hand, we have Louisa May Alcott, who really sort of shows what she considered good qualities of Italians and maybe the less good qualities. But there was lots of hate against Italians at the time period. So it's quite remarkable that Laurie is half Italian in the book. And Germans were also really disliked during this time period in America, in certain circles.
I also think it's very important, like Mr. Lawrence is actually portrayed like he's a very kind and giving and lovable person, but he also is a flaw that part one we learned that his son-in-law or married an Italian woman and she was against it. Mrs. March states that he never could like the Italian lady, even though she was very kind and loving and overall a very nice person, and Mr. Lawrence couldn't like her, even though she was very kind to him and all that stuff, simply because he kind of represented, I think, the culture or the society around that time.
If Mr. Lawrence was raised in an environment where there is a lot of preconceptions against Italians, then he would part of that kind of generation that sort of automatically sees them as lower than he. It sucks, but that's the way a lot of people are, even still today.
Yes, sadly. But I also did say, I really love how Louisa May Alcott, she made these interracial marriages and that women work so well. Whenever I read those passages between the couples, like except for Meg and John, they are both American. They're still a lovely couple though. But whenever I read it, I love the way Louisa May Alcott portrays these couples, Amy and Laurie, and Joe and Beth, because it really gets lost in all of the adaptations. I think the only couple which gets a bit of light, where we get to see a bit, is the one between John and Meg, only because Meg is the first one to marry, I assume. But then movie makers all like romanticize Joe and Laurie, and it doesn't feel right because it also kind of cheapens the fact that she does in the end fall in love with Friedrich and never love with Laurie the way people expected her to.
Because that's not the way things happen in the novel. And because Laurie is based partially on Larry Wisniewski. And the more I have read about Louisa May Alcott's relationship with Larry Wisniewski, it more and more feels like as a mother and son relationship.
I see what you mean. I also have to state that for me, I don't think that Little Women would have been, I will call it perfect because nothing or nobody is perfect, but it would have not been the masterpiece, as I call it, if Joe had ended up with Laurie, because first of all, Louisa May Alcott based all the characters around somebody she loved, cared about, you, and it would not have been right for her to marry Joe and Laurie because Ladislaw is the inspiration for Laurie, one of the inspirations, and she doesn't end up with Harry. I don't think it will work because it is all like it. I know it's only semi-autobiographical, but it would not have felt right because in the proposal scene, which I rather call the harassing scene, but in that one, you see in the novel, of course, only because why would the movie makers do such a wonderful thing? They very much don't show that in the novel, Joe really talks to him in that scene as if he were a child. It really comes off. She's like, you will meet an accomplished woman, you sensible boy, and all that stuff. That is really there. And the movie makers just don't use it. Okay, the movie makers, for me, are more likely to be after the money because Little Women is such a beloved tale. But that's another thing.
I agree. And we will get into this chapter soon. Throughout After this chapter, Joe refers Laurie and Amy as children.
Yes, that is also very cute and funny, and it also shows that Joe has always been much more mature than Laurie. I can't kind of say whether she was more mature than Amy after Amy grew up, but I think it also shows that while Joe is a free spirit and independent and I will not say egoistic, but at some kinds it calls, she says like, I only want to do things for myself. So she cares very much about herself, and she also respects herself very much. And I love that she calls them the children because first of all it's cute. Second of all, like I said, it shows that she is very much mature.
Hello, friends. It is Niina from the Little Woman podcast. Just to let you all know that the Little Woman podcast episode transcripts are now available as books. You can find them as paperbacks and ebooks. They are wonderful reading for all the fans of Louisa May Alcott. You can find all the links from the description. And now, back to the show.